Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the Daily Score. This is the channel where we analyze hot topics in today's media to see if they were deceptive, taken out of context, or just blatantly a lie. Today we're going to be looking at what happened back on the Capitol on the 6th. Did President Trump really incite a riot? Did President Trump at any point tell anyone to go charge the Capitol and actually enter the Capitol? And how does his apparent rhetoric compare with Democrat leaders' rhetoric of violence? All this and more coming up. According to PolitiFact, and I'll leave a link down in the description for everybody to see here, these are the parts of President Trump's speech that supposedly caused this riot.
Our country has had enough. We will not take it anymore, and that's what this is all about. And to use a favorite term that all of you people really came up with, we will stop the steal. We will not let them silence your voices. We're not going to let it happen. Not going to let it happen. Thank you. And many of you have traveled from all across the nation to be here, and I want to thank you for the extraordinary love. That's what it is. There's never been a movement like this, ever, ever. For the extraordinary love for this amazing country and this amazing movement. Thank you. We're gathered together in the heart of our nation's capital for one very, very basic and simple reason: to save our democracy. Unbelievable what we have to go through. What we have to go through, and you have to get your people to fight. And if they don't fight, we have to primary the hell out of the ones that don't fight. You primary them, we're gonna let you know who they are. I can already tell you, frankly. With his hands tied behind his back. It's like a boxer. And we want to be so nice. We want to be so respectful of everybody, including bad people. And we're going to have to fight much harder. And Mike Pence is going to have to come through for us. And if he doesn't, that will be a sad day for our country. Because you're sworn to uphold our Constitution. Now it is up to Congress to confront this egregious assault on our democracy. And after this, we're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you. We're going to walk down. We're going to walk down anyone you want, but I think right here we're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women, and we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them, because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong. We have come to demand that Congress do the right thing and only count the electors who have been lawfully slated. Lawfully slated. I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. Today we will see whether Republicans stand strong for integrity of our elections, but whether or not they stand strong for our country. Our country. Our country has been under siege for a long time, far longer than this 4-year period.
Now, I suppose if you stretch and very severely manipulate the meaning of some of those statements, one can say that some could have been taken the wrong way. But for this, I mean, do you realize just how far someone would have to twist the president's words for them to use this as a means to charge into the Capitol? It makes no logical sense. Nowhere at all did President Trump tell anyone to charge into the Capitol, even enter the Capitol. His words to everyone were quite obviously the opposite. He told everybody to peacefully go over to the Capitol. His words were the complete antithesis of what we're being told. From what I can see, the only part that comes even remotely close, and I really mean remotely and very loosely use the term close, is when President Trump says this.
Unbelievable what we have to go through. What we have to go through, and you have to get your people to fight. And if they don't fight, we have to primary the hell out of the ones that don't fight. You primary them, we're gonna let you know who they are. I can already tell you, frankly.
Now, if President Trump meant literal physical violence, he wouldn't have stated this.
We have to primary the hell out of the ones that don't fight. You primary them, we're gonna let you know who they are. I can already tell you, frankly.
Did you catch what President Trump just said there? He said you need to primary them. And all this means is when it comes time to select who you want to vote for again, you choose someone who's better aligned with your point of view. If President Trump meant to literally fight, things would have been monumentally different. He wouldn't have chosen a de-escalating action by saying to primary the candidate after a supposed aggressive action. He would have stepped it up a notch and said something to the effect of specifically targeting them for physical harm, and President Trump did nothing of the sort. When he uses the word fight, I mean in every instance, and not only this example, but in all others as well, he's talking about fighting at the ballot box, fighting in Congress to have our voices heard, fighting in the courts to have our voices heard. He does not mean physical violence. Alright, we have just now all listened to what PolitiFact and many other things started the riot. We have also just heard how far you have to stretch reality in order to force yourself and others to believe that this rhetoric is incendiary. But you know what? Maybe you're one of those ones who thinks that you don't have to stretch anything to believe that this is a problem. And if that's the case, please, I beg you to let me know down in the comments what you think of these non-incendiary comments made by Democrats in the not-so-distant past and present. What are they like? Do you feel that they cause a problem? And if so, how can you have a problem with one and not the other? Here you have Loretta Lynch saying that some have fought and died for the advancement of the liberal agenda. And to make this worse, she is saying that, it's okay that it happened. It might have to happen again in the future, but it's all justified as long as the duly elected President Trump is ousted from the White House.
Loretta Lynch now calling for blood, encouraging protesters to help get the president out of the White House, even if it costs them their lives.
They've marched, they've bled. Yes, some of them have died. This is hard. Every good thing is. We have done this before, we can do this again.
And here, of course, you have Chris Cuomo suddenly saying that protesting isn't a problem, specifically violent protesting, because he doesn't think that it's in the Constitution. Well, let me remind him that it actually does say it in the Constitution. Yeah, I'm sure it specifically states in the First Amendment that it is the right of the people to peacefully assemble. Not violently assemble, but to peacefully assemble.
Now, too many see the protests as the problem. No, the problem is what forced your fellow citizens to take to the streets. Persistent and poisonous inequities and injustice. And please, show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful. Show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful. And peaceful. Peaceful, 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 peaceful.
And last but not least, at least for part one here, we have Kamala Harris. Now, once you make it past her nauseatingly fake and obnoxious smile, she states that the greatest movements we've had have been born out of protest, understanding the power of the people to take to the streets and force their government to address their issues. Now, she says that we want a government that fights for her ideas. And as we have seen with over $9 billion in damages from these groups that she's giving praise to, that it's all justified as long as her agenda is the one being pushed.
I know that your mom was very politically active. What did you learn from her?
I learned that the greatest movements that we have seen in recent history in our country, but probably since the beginning, have been born out of protest, have been born out of understanding the power of the people to take to the streets and force their government to address what is wrong, the inequities, the inequalities, the unfairness, but also the conscience of a government is its people, to force the government to be true to the ideals that we say we hold dear. And almost every one of those marches has been about one fundamental ideal in our country, which is equal justice under law, and fighting to make sure we have a government in a country that at least every, few steps gets closer to achieving that ideal. We've not yet reached it. We've never actually reached it. But these protests, I think, are the catalyst to getting there.
Now, did you actually catch what she said there? She said, I learned that the greatest movements that we've seen in recent history in our country, well, probably since the beginning, have been born out of protest. Need I remind her that this country was founded on defying England's crown, and that we wouldn't be here in this amazing country if it weren't for the bloody wars that have followed? Is she now saying that the greatest movement in history was a bloody and violent revolution? Thank you for coming here and listening. This is part 1. Part 2 will come out in the next couple of days. I am a new channel. If you could please like, share, and subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. Take care.